they blow a hole in my backyard, everyone is gonna run away, and the creeks won't flow to the great lake below. Will the water in the well still be okay? If they blow a hole in the backbone, the one that runs across the muscles of the land, oh, we might get a load of stone for the road, but I don't know how much longer we can stand. We'll need to build some new apartments, and I know we're gonna have to fix the roads, but if we blow another hole in the escarpment, the wild ones won't have anywhere to go. If they blow a hole in my backyard, everyone is gonna run away, and the creeks won't flow to the great lake below. Will the water in the well still be okay? And we'll keep driving on the blind line if we don't know where we wanna go. And even knowledge that sound can get watered down, and truth can get sucked out the car window. Truth gets sucked out the car window. We're 2/3 water. What do we really need but sun and showers, soil and sea? We're 2/3 water. The aquifers provide. Deep down in the rock, there's a pearl inside. If they blow a hole in my backyard, everyone is gonna run away, and the creeks won't flow to the great lake below. Will the water in the well still be okay? If they blow a hole in the backbone, the one that runs across the muscles of the land, oh, we might get a load of stone for the road, but I don't know how much longer we can stand. Oh, we might get a load of stone for the road, but I don't know how much longer we can stand.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the meeting. My name is Rachel. I'm the organizer for the DAM campaign. We'd like to thank you all for being here tonight. And here are just a few quick Zoom tips that we have. You guys will all be muted for this meeting, but we do really encourage you to use the chat, introduce yourself, let us know where you're from. If you're part of any community groups, we would love to hear from you. We do have the option for a live transcript. So you'll see at the bottom of your screen a CC for closed captioning. Click that and you'll be able to have subtitles for the entire meeting. We encourage you to interact over chat, use reactions, and have a good time. So thank you so much. And I'm going to pass it over to Mike now.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Balkwell, and I'll be introduced later to you as the moderator for this evening, but first I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. And land acknowledgement of the Indigenous peoples who've lived here before and expressions of gratitude for the stewardship of the land while true also has a looking back kind of feeling to me. And I want to connect the past and the present in this land acknowledgement by first acknowledging that the colonization of Canada by Britain and France dispossessed Indigenous people from the land. Colonization is always about a few people acquiring the land for profit through settlement and extracting resources, forests, waters, minerals, etc. And that extracting resources for profit continues, meaning the colonial project continues. It's not past, it is still present. Today, the Ontario government continues this colonial project by giving corporations unlimited permission to extract gravel for profit. This unlimited gravel mining also overrides your rights as people who have settled here in this community or as part of the generations who have settled here. There's an urgent need for the solidarity. There is a solidarity that connects the dispossession of Indigenous people's rights and the override of your community's interests. However, this solidarity begins with restoring Indigenous people's sovereignty over the land. In this area, this means solidarity with the Haudenosaunee and the Mississauga peoples of Six Nations. This solidarity is crucial first to restore justice in this land and also to restore Indigenous ways of stewardship with Mother Nature as we meet the challenges of the climate crisis. Thank you.
Welcome. I just looked through the amazing audience of people and my heart is just full and I'm so happy to see everybody joining us tonight. It feels great. It feels really good to see our community coming together like this already. So thank you for joining. I know this is not easy for our community to get online, but I'm really thrilled with what I'm seeing right now. So welcome and welcome to Wellington Water Watchers and the Reform Gravel organization. We are so grateful for the support to put this meeting on tonight. This is amazing. So I met Mike about 2 years ago around this time. And at that time, I was very focused on policy, which I still am, but policy was the thing that interested me. And when I looked into what was surrounding this property of the proposed Hallman pit, I couldn't imagine how it could possibly be a gravel pit. And I was confident that policy would prevail and that there was no chance that there could be a gravel pit. I'm gonna stop my video because I think I can see myself breaking up, but I thought there was not a chance that a gravel pit could be on top of a source water protected area, a wellhead protection area, less than 120 meters from a established community, prime farmland, provincially significant wetland, all of these things. I couldn't imagine that being a possibility. But as time went on, I started to realize that there's more to these types of things than just policy. And what Mike and Wellington Water Watchers has helped me to understand is the importance of people power. So seeing everybody here tonight is uplifting for me because I think at this point in time, with the Hallman pit coming to council shortly, people power is what we need. So welcome and let's get on with the night.
Thank you, Sam. I'm Mike Balkwell. I work with the Water Watchers as their campaign director, and I'm also working to help manage the dam campaign, which you'll hear more about. I'm going to briefly introduce the agenda. In a moment, I'm going to introduce Sarah Harmer, who's the co-chair of the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition. We like to refer to her as one of our DAM co-chairs. DAM stands for Demand a Moratorium Now. So in a couple of minutes, I'm going to introduce Madame, pardon my pun, Sarah Harmer, and she's going to make some opening remarks. Then we're going to hear from 4 speakers from Wilmot Township, from Citizens for Safe Groundwater, giving 7 reasons to say no to the Hallman pit, the proposed Hallman pit. Then we're going to be following that will be Graham Flint, who's the other dam co-chair. And he's going to connect the issues between what's happening in Wilmot Township, what's at stake in Wilmot Township, and what's at stake in the province of Ontario, and why we need to stop the Hallman Pit, and why we need to stop the Hallman Pit, and why we need to have a moratorium on all new gravel mining approvals while we review and reset the gravel mining industry in Ontario. We're going to conclude with some actions that you can take to support Citizens for Safe Groundwater and their work in Wilmot Township. We're going to do some fundraising to help them with their action, and we're going to close then with some closing comments and end the meeting around 8:30. So as we're getting started, I want to remind everybody, please introduce yourself through the chat box. Say where you're from, why you're here. If you have questions anytime during the meeting, put them in the chat box. And as I moderate the meeting, I will either bring your question forward for someone to answer. And I want to ask anybody who feels in the meeting who feels they can answer the question to do that through the chat box too. It's too bad we can't all be in a room together, but I'd like you to imagine that. I'd like to imagine your favorite, maybe community hall in Wilmot Township. I'd like to imagine us all there. 200 people RSVP'd for this meeting. There's about 70 devices who have registered, and behind those devices is more than one person. That's the meeting we have. So I always like to ask this question, and I'm looking at the, I'll be looking for a thumbs up or something. Are we at the same meeting? I hope so. So Sarah, can I invite you to the virtual stage? There you are. Over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here. Thank you, Sam, for the welcome. It's really, I think I'm unmuted. Yeah, I think I am. Okay. It's really good to be here. I'm coming to you from Eastern Ontario, but I grew up not far from Waterloo, just down in the Niagara Escarpment area of North Burlington. And like you, I was and still am a very concerned local citizen when it comes to protecting the well water that we all rely on and appreciate so much. And in your case, the municipal well water, or the water as well. But you know, there are so many small groups, so many people coming up against the same systemic issues and the same incredible areas that are at risk and the same farmland that's so vulnerable. And so, back when that video was shot from the very beginning of the meeting in 2007, that was, I guess, 15 years ago. I wrote Escarpment Blues because I was feeling it. And unfortunately, I'm still feeling it. But I've come together with so many great citizens, people who have been paying attention to this issue for a long time and know where the changes need to take place. So I'm really heartened and relieved to be part of the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition, so a co-chair with Graham Flint, because there are some big changes that need to be made, and we're coming together to kind of lift all boats in this fight, in this effort. And these are our commons. These are the places that we care about and we need to protect so that they can take care of us and future generations coming forward. So thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about this really important issue and how it's connected to so many other issues, as Mike mentioned, like the climate crisis and food security, etc. What you're doing is important, not just for Wilmot Township and the drinking water of the Waterloo, moraine, but for citizens all across the province. We need each other, and thanks for being here to kind of raise your part of the effort. What I'm going to do now is ask that we play our manifesto video. As Mike mentioned, the DAM campaign stands for Demand a Moratorium Now, DAMN. And so we made a manifesto video to try to encapsulate some of the big problems that we're facing in the province. So please roll tape.
We're in too deep. For decades, the gravel mining industry has blasted, dug, crushed, and trucked across Ontario with apparent impunity. And we've let them. Year after year, the leaders we've given the job of protecting our province to have handed them the shovels and said, go, dig more. Go dig over 5,000 enormous sites in our backyards. Go dig out 13 times more gravel every year than what we use. Go destroy 5,000 acres of land a year and take up to 4.6 billion liters of precious water every day. Go destroy the natural environment and damage our communities while paying less property tax than some single families do. Go accelerate the climate crisis by feeding sprawl, highways, cement production, transportation, and other massive causes of greenhouse gases. And finally, go do it all without any consent of First Nations, as our Constitution says you must. It's already too late for some communities. Those who bravely fought the impossible David versus Goliath battles they rarely had a chance to win. This multinational, foreign-owned industry is so unchecked and self-regulated and so deep-pocketed that the moment you try to stop one site, another appears somewhere else. So we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to say enough. No more new sites, period. We, the people of Ontario, demand that our government impose an immediate moratorium on all new gravel mining approvals until an independent panel can chart a new path forward. One that will honor First Nations treaties and obligations, prevent more climate destruction, protect groundwater and farmland and endangered species, and give the communities dealing with these sites more say in how land use is decided. Sign the petition to demand a moratorium now at reformgravelmining.ca.
Hey there, Sarah.
Hey.
So Sarah, thank you very much for being here. And as you say, you fought this fight, and it's an inspiration to us all. Even though regrettably you have to continue fighting this fight, it's an inspiration to us all that you are. So thank you for being here with us tonight. And you and I, we're going to kind of talk. We're going to be co-hosts and talk with each other and with the audience tonight as we proceed through these presentations.
Sounds good.
And I see, Marilyn, hey, you've asked a question, a great question in the chat box, and around Ford taking away the right of local government to make a final decision. And we're going to be talking about, that's a theme for the evening that you're going to hear many people speak about, because Ford, while the Ontario government regulations are tilted in favor of gravel mining corporations, and you'll hear more about that from our speakers tonight, local municipalities do have the right to say no. And it's important they say no. And you'll be hearing this from several speakers tonight, and I'm going to encourage people to respond to your question and your comments through the chat box. So there are 7 reasons to say no. Reminds me a little bit about the Paul Simon song, 50 Ways to Stop a Quarry. But there are at least 7 reasons to say no. And we're going to focus on farmland, groundwater, community health, road safety, site concerns, cumulative impacts, and planning problems. And Sam, are you on to speak first? I can't remember if it's you or Mark Reese's video that goes first.
Oh, Mark goes first for that.
Right. Okay. So we're going to have a video presentation by Mark Reeser, who's a local resident and also vice president of the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. As Sarah said, please roll the tape.
Hi, my name is Mark Reeser. I live at 1918 Huron Road, just southeast of the proposed Hallman gravel pit. I am a turkey farmer, and I'm also vice president of the Waterloo Federation of Agriculture, as well as the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. Ever since I was a child, I've had a passion for the land and wanted to be a farmer. And I continue to have that passion for the land and care deeply about it. Unfortunately, only 5% of Ontario's land mass is suitable for agriculture. The rest doesn't have soil, and can't grow crops. And so it's very unfortunate that 175 acres of cropland are lost in Ontario every single day to urbanization and other uses like aggregate extraction. Waterloo has some of the best soils in all of Canada. We did a economic impact study of agriculture in Waterloo region a number of years ago, and it was confirmed to have the second highest income per acre of any county in Ontario after the wine growing region in Niagara. So it's very special land here. It's a very special place, and the soil is incredible. Farmland is actually a non-renewable natural resource. Once you pave it over, once you turn it into a gravel pit, it is gone forever. And if you look after it and take care of it, it's a perpetual resource in that it can potentially produce food forever. Legislation says that aggregate extraction is an interim use. So extract the gravel, rehabilitate the land back to agriculture. Virtually all licenses stipulate that the land will be returned and rehabilitated back to agriculture. Unfortunately, in practice, this rarely, if ever, occurs, and aggregate extraction results in a permanent land use change. It is very hard, if not impossible, to rehabilitate land back to its original productive capacity. And unfortunately, there's very little enforcement to ensure that that is even attempted. Where I live here, I'm surrounded by 6 active aggregate licenses, some more than 40 years old. Not one has experienced any significant rehabilitation, including one owned by the township of Wilmot. As a matter of fact, on that license, most of the topsoil is gone, and don't know where it is. So you're left with something that resembles a moonscape. Most unfortunate. I think that if the evidence shows, and I believe it does, that aggregate extraction is in fact not an interim use, but a permanent land use change, how can we ever license a new pit? I respectfully suggest that we cannot and we should not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And Sarah, I'm wondering, is farmland an issue in Burlington where you're opposing the Nelson Quarry?
Oh yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah, right on top of Mount Emo. It's class 1 prime farmland, 150 or so acres at risk right now. Yeah, incredible flood control, food growing, prime, the best of the best, and it's at risk right now by Lafarge, Wholesome, Nelson Agri combo. Yeah.
And what about at Kingston where you live? Is there gravel mining threatening farmland there?
Yeah, Kingston doesn't really have the same kind of farmland. It's not nearly as arable. It's more pasture. But yes, what we have a quarry in Eastern Ontario, just north of Kingston, that's just up for. They're trying to get a new permit for it, and that's significant woodland, riparian habitat, unevaluated wetlands. So some really good natural habitat, but no, not in the same way. Farmland in Eastern Ontario isn't the same as it is in the Waterloo area or in Burlington.
I'm reminded of something I heard Sam say once, which is that farmland close to market is much more important than gravel close to market. I'm very happy now to introduce Christina Harnock. And Christina, if you'll come join us on the virtual stage.
All right, wonderful. Thanks for sharing the screen as well. So I'm Christina Harnock, and I live in Shingletown with our family. And in the next slide, you'll see our kids waiting for the bus. And though we have sheltered them and shielded them from many of our worries, they no doubt know about the gravel pit. And I have very poignant questions from them at times. So our motivation is definitely with them at heart and at mind. So in the next slide, I outline my concerns. and they are part of the 7 reasons why. And I'll speak a little bit to just the noise and the air quality, but just the impacts that it has on a personal level. And as Sam really referenced, and she was wise to do so, of the human impact and our power to be together as well. So my hope is that in presenting some of this information, it can also maybe inspire you to use your voice, and maybe some of this will prompt you to then also want to expand on these issues and present these issues to those who are going to be making this incredibly important decision. So on the next slide is an image that many people should be familiar with, and I think it's so compelling because it really has a look at the health impacts, economic impacts, the visual, the ecological impacts, and that we really have to look at this globally. And we cannot look at any of these issues in isolation, and to do so would be incredibly just not encompassing of the big picture and the larger impacts. So on the next slide, I'm going to speak to information that I learned listening and attending the March 22nd delegation in March 2021. And I encourage you, if you didn't, this is the Wilmot Council meeting, and it is available, and the minutes are there, and there is so much data. So I did want to just highlight some of the things that really stuck out for me as a parent, but as someone who's concerned. And I wish I could unlearn much of this, and with sharing this knowledge also feels that there's great responsibility, but once you learn it, you can't really unlearn it. So in this, seniors and young children, of course, are the most vulnerable in our communities, and they are also going to be the most vulnerable when exposed to fine particulate matter. And this is related to increases in cardiopulmonary diseases, asthma, bronchitis, emphysema, premature death, and those with pre-existing conditions are more at risk. And diesel emissions are a large part of that. So they contain fine particulate matter, and that enters the bloodstream. And this is smaller than a red blood cell. We know that diesel fuel is dangerous and not good for us, but it has been classified as carcinogenic to humans by the IARC. And in the next slide, there are numerous documentations and studies, and I think the studies that are really important are those that are recent, and those that are including Canadian data. And it was the Lancet Planetary Health, which released their data in 2020, and this includes data from the United States as well as Ontario. But as a result of increased exposure to fine particulate matter, with this, they identify then impaired cognitive function, accelerated cognitive decline, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, and dementia. And someone who has both Alzheimer's in my family line as well as young children, this is front of mind in terms of my concerns of what this will mean for us as we live less than 1,000 meters from where this proposed location is. There are other studies to explore. And again, if you haven't seen the minutes from some of the council meetings, and this one was on March 22nd for Wilmot Council, it is so important to go back and review some of the amazing data. And I encourage those of you, if you feel compelled, and on the next slide as well, please, to present your voice, but also do your research. If you live on Bleams Road or Whitmore Road, the setback line goes through many of people's properties. And if you are not sure if it does, it's really important that you go through and have a look at that and ask council what that means for you, and for that, the impact that that could potentially have on your home, or the limitations that that could place on your property from different buildings, activities, use, etc. So wanting just to encourage people to go in eyes wide open. And finally, on the last slide, one more, in conversations that I've had with neighbors, many times people are like, oh yeah, someone's really got to do something about this. Someone's got to talk about this, and there's so many people who have brought their voice forward. And I think this is a time where I really want to respectfully and gently, but at the same time, compel you to add your voice to what we are trying to do in terms of asking that it is important that Wilmot Council say no to this rezoning. So on April 4th, please be courageous and find ways to make your voice heard. If you haven't already done so, now is truly the time. And as your neighbor, as a parent, and as a human on a part of taking care of our earth, I really hope that you can find ways to do so, because now is the time to act. And one cannot sit by and expect someone else to do the work. We all have a part to play in that. So thank you for your time this evening, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the rest of the presenters and speakers.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you for your compelling presentation and for your invitation. In the chat box, you'll see that the email clerks@wilmottownship.com, where you can copy that right now and start your request to delegate. I want to connect your comments, Christina, to Sam's up at the top, which is people power is really important. And that time after time after time, we have seen councils turn around and make a good decision on behalf of the community when the community shows up and asks them to do that. So it is really important. I mean, I'll give us a couple of examples. Recently, the movements to stop sprawl and preserve farmland in Hamilton and Halton were both successful because of the overwhelming number of people who delegated. So it's really very important. In a moment, I'm going to ask Sam to join us, but I just want to again encourage you to make comments in the chat box in response to the presenters that you hear, and to encourage them. So thank you very much, Christina, for your presentation. And I see somebody's asking to clarify the day and the time to delegate. So I'm going to ask somebody to put that in the chat box. It's April 4th. And Rory, maybe you can put the time of the meeting in as well, so people know how to fit that into their schedule. Next person we're going to speak is introduced to speak is Sam Lernout, and I should say she needs no introduction because she needs no introduction. And it looks like she's brought her lucky cat with her, which is also a good sign. So Sam, over to you.
So, and we have more people in now. So this is just, I love it. Okay. So I just want to talk about water and road. You wouldn't necessarily want to put those together, but so as a resident of Whitmer Road, I need assurance, me and my family need assurance that this proposed zone change will not significantly impact the safety of Whitmer Road. This is the road which I use to access to get to my home, my children use to get on the bus, to get our mail, my neighbors use recreationally, the community uses recreationally, farmers use to get to the fields, and that emergency services may need to use to get to those I love if ever needed when seconds count. This township road is not designed the same as a regional road. It's narrow, it has no shoulders, no guardrails, very little line of sight in many places, hidden driveways, no lighting. Homes are close to the road and it currently appears to be used more by cyclists in the summer than motorists. Russell Brownlee from True North Safety has identified that the safety impacts of the proposed Holman pit have not been adequately considered in the applicant's report. I have not seen any evidence that his report has been considered and addressed by the applicant or Wilmot staff. I urge council to consider this report, Russell Brownlee's report, before considering the Holman pit. And so secondly, next slide, please. This proposed pit, as was mentioned earlier, is atop a regional recharge area that is proposed to remove, and this pit is proposed to remove all but 1.5 meters of the sand and gravel above the water table that is currently functioning to clean and filter the water we drink. The pit would be fit with asphalt and concrete stockpiling, crushing and screening, as well as 5 wash ponds to extract, that the extracted gravel would be washed in atop our groundwater. As a groundwater drinker, as everybody is in the region of Waterloo, I'm very concerned with the utter ignorance to Professor Emil Friend, hydrogeologist and groundwater modeler Michael Friend, and professional hydrogeologist Wilf Ruland's recommendations to satisfy their outstanding concerns for groundwater protection. Again, I must be assured that this proposed zone change to an industrial aggregate extraction site fit with auxiliary uses will not impact my drinking water. Yet another expert this is yet another expert testimony that has not been addressed by the applicant or the staff report. I call on council to represent the needs of the community before the wants of the applicant. And that's all I got.
That's what you have is good. I was wondering, Sarah, as we looked at those pictures of the wash ponds and the moonscape, if that was a too familiar sight for you.
Yes, but berms do a lot to kind of hide the truth from passersby. So yes, I grew up on Mount Nemo, and since the 1950s, there's been now 550-acre hollowed out below water table, hole at the center of Mount Nemo. And so yeah, that does look very familiar. And the concerns with well water are very familiar. A number of residents have had to have their wells re-drilled. And had issues with the quality of their drinking water as well. So yeah, for 70 years, that's been a concern and been creating a lot of problems.
And Sarah, I'm going to ask you a leading question. So when Nelson Quarry was proposing their quarry, did they promise that it would never have an impact on people's private wells?
Well, I wasn't around in the 50s when they first started up, so I can't quite say what their promises were, but there's been endless statements made that do not end up bearing out, including, how much more rock is available. Oh, we're going to be winding down in 5 years. Meanwhile, 10 years, 15 years later, still crushing rock and hauling rock out of there. So it's very hard to, it's always a moving statement or two coming from the operator, unfortunately.
And I'm curious, does the operator today admit to any problems, admit to having any impact on people's private wells?
Well, they can't really deny the facts. They have had to re-drill a number of people's wells. Their spokespeople in the press, in the Toronto Star recently said there was no formal complaints, which is, and then that spokesperson was actually corrected by the company themselves, saying, no, he's not a technical guy, he doesn't know. But they say a lot of things publicly that don't bear out with the facts. So they have had to drill numerous wells, et cetera, et cetera.
And this may be a theme Graham can pick up on with his experience and hearing about what happens to the water and the wells for people who live near quarries. I know that Sam and Rory Farnan have provided a lot of leadership for Citizens for Safe Groundwater, and Rory's not able to be with us tonight, but he did record a statement, and we're going to now hear Rory's statement. And you'll notice he went out to the local wetland in order to film that. So can we roll the tape?
Good evening, folks. Thank you for logging in this evening. I'm standing at the edge of the property line between the Witzel Homestead and the proposed Hallman Pit in Shingletown. In front of me is the community of Shingletown, roughly 50 homes. And of course, we're talking tonight about the Hallman Pit and the potential negative effects that it will have not only on the community of Shingletown, but on Wilmot Township and the region of Waterloo. I want to thank everybody, whether you're joining us for the first time tonight or whether you've been with us for the last couple of years. Your hard work and dedication has not gone unnoticed. And of course, over the next couple of weeks and leading up to the August 4th council meeting, it's important now more than ever that you remain strong and that we remain together and that, we don't take our foot off the pedal. As we lead up to the April 4th meeting. And so please consider delegating, consider calling your councillors, emailing your councillors, your mayor, and making it known that you are still against the Hallman Pit. To council, to Wilmot Council, April 4th is, of course, the night where we place our trust in your hands. To protect our community and to keep an open mind. We have spent a lot of time, and of course we've raised money from the community to provide you with leading expert testimony and reports on some of the effects that quite clearly remain outstanding in this process. So please, my message for council is to keep an open mind, to take all things into consideration. And you know, one of the things obviously that we felt has been lacking in those reports from Wilmot Planning and from the Region's planning is the fact that our expert reports haven't been addressed adequately. So please take them into consideration. You know, it's extremely difficult to think that, you know, the applicant's reports are 100% right and our expert reports are 0% right. There are some things that just don't add up, and we need you to be that strong voice for us. So, you know, I just wanted to take a couple of moments. Again, thank you very much. And please, over the next couple of weeks, whatever you can do, whatever hand you can lend, we look forward to April the 4th, and we will continue working hard over the next couple of weeks to make sure that our concerns are heard and the concerns of the community are addressed. So have a good night, folks. Thank you, and take care.
Thank you, Rory. And I know from looking in the participant list that you're listening in tonight. I know you're involved with childcare tonight and you can't log into the meeting, but thank you for your statement and that you're listening in. And folks, because Rory's listening in, I encourage you to show him some love through the chat box. And you know, his invitation echoes that of Christina's and Sam's, which is now is the time. And I thought that your comment, Sam, was quite thoughtful, that it's very important that council listens to what the community needs, not to what the gravel mining company wants. So it's been a very good presentation on the critical issues of what's happening in Wilmot Township, and what's happening in Wilmot Township is happening all across Ontario. And we're very pleased that Graham Flint, the other DAM co-chair, is here with us tonight. And what I'm going to do is ask, we've got another video, which is about 2 minutes long, which is Graham outlining the issues that face many communities like yours in dealing with the negative impacts of gravel mining. And we're going to play that video, and then after the video, Graham is going to come on and speak to us all. So if we can roll the tape.
We have these scars of gravel mines all across Ontario. They are everywhere. I mean, most people would be surprised to hear that there's over 5,000, almost 5,600 gravel sites in Ontario. I mean, it starts with just the scraping off of all the soils that have any capability of supporting life. The sites themselves have these things called berms, which are basically piles of soil around the perimeter of them. So you can't really see them when you drive by, but if you see this sort of strange hill of dirt on either side of a rural road, there's probably a gravel mine behind it. Even if you're not living next to a gravel mine, this issue should matter to you. The last thing we should be doing is creating more highways and sprawl, and that's exactly what the majority of gravel is used for. These are not benign uses of land. These are socially and environmentally destructive. Gravel in the ground has a purpose. It filters our groundwater. It provides clean drinking water. It helps with flood management when there's excessive rain. Pretty well every gravel operation in the province deals with water at some point. Either they're digging below the water and they need to deal with a water table, or they're using large amounts of water to wash and prepare the gravel. Gravel mining and climate change feed off each other. It's time to connect the dots, that all the problems that we're having in all the different communities really are related. We actually have a policy in Ontario that says there's no need to show need for establishing a new gravel mine. So the industry has permission to dig up on an annual basis 13 times what we actually use. That's a policy of a bygone era when we thought the planet was just something we could take and take and take and not be respectful of it at all. But the reality is that an awful lot of sites sit dormant, and that's the horrible secret of this industry. The dormant gravel mines tell us that we've got more gravel mines in Ontario than we need. They're a clear indication that the industry is out of control, successive governments have failed us. It's time for us to join together in a common voice and say, stop. So our call is to pause new approvals until we can look at the issues associated with gravel mining and address them in a sustainable way. My name is Graham Flint, and I've been dealing with gravel mining for almost 2 decades now. The time for a moratorium is now. Well, good evening, everybody. As introduced, my name is Graham Flint, and I have the privilege to work with Sarah as the co-chair on the DAM campaign, the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition. I want to start just by saying, I wish we were in a room together. As Mike says, I long for the day where I could be looking into your faces, I could be chatting with you in breaks, I could be shaking your hand and congratulating you on turning out today and staying engaged with this issue. And unfortunately, we can't yet. So, please understand that I'm doing all that virtually in the best way that we can. I also want to tell you that, as mentioned in the video, I've been in your shoes. I can remember in 2003, 2004, when a proposal for what would have been Ontario's 3rd largest limestone quarry by production volume was proposed literally in my backyard. And I can remember just kind of going, well, wait a minute, that's going to be crazy. There's no way that they can run an open pit mine in my backyard and it's not going to have an effect on me. And it's going to affect some things that are pretty serious. The groundwater I used to drink, the roads that I used to travel on. I can only imagine it's going to create dust and noise and all sorts of other issues. And I, turned around looking for help and there wasn't a lot. The system is really very broken in Ontario. It's very one-sided. That puts communities, at a disadvantage. And only by coming together can you really make the difference. So it is so important. I thought Rory's call to action was tremendous. It is only by coming together and putting your voices together that you will drive this to the conclusion that it needs to be reached, that you push back and get this proposal off the table. The issues that Mark and Christina and Sam have all mentioned, before me today are real. I'm going to spend the next little bit of time and sort of take the conversation up to the highest level. And then I'm going to come back down to your situation and provide you a little bit of thoughts that I have that I hope you'll find helpful as you move forward in this final push. And I do want to emphasize something that Mike has said already, which is I can think in my 2 decades of history of more than one occasion when a local council came to the side of the community in the 11th hour. And they did that because the community just kept bringing up the issues, kept putting on the common sense concerns. One of the other things I want to say now before I jump up the provincial level is when an operator or an applicant buys a property of land and walks in and starts this process of getting zoning changed, and aggregate licenses granted, they are land speculators. For some way in this process, it seems to get turned on its head. And it's almost as if they walk around feeling that they have a right to do this. They have a right to dig out of the gravel simply because they bought the land. And that simply isn't true. They have speculated. They have bought the land under the speculation that they can get the zoning changed, that they can get a license granted. And we need to remember that. They're the ones that are turning over the apple cart, disturbing the status quo. All the community is really asking to do is to preserve what is. And that's very important. All right, well, enough of that. If you can move forward in my slide deck for a moment. Unfortunately, the issues that you guys are facing aren't unique across Ontario. Every year, about another 20 to 25 communities goes through exactly what you've been going through for the last 2 years. It is out of control. There are almost, depending on how you cut the numbers, whether you include the pits and quarries that the province actually uses and runs themselves to support the 400 highways, the 400 series highways, the number of pits and quarries in Ontario can be as high as 6,000. But 5,000, 5,500, it's a huge number. And as Mike has said, that when a pit and a quarry is licensed, the province assigns it a maximum production total. This is the amount that you can pull out every year. And the total of that amount that you can pull out every year across all these 5,000 plus quarries in Ontario is 13 times more than we actually use each year. Think about that. It's not double, it's not triple, it's not 5 times or 10 times. It's 13 times the amount that we actually use this year. So we have way over licensed the land in Ontario to the gravel industry. That licensing that happens each year, if you look back over the last 3 decades, is on average is 5,000 acres of land each year are turned over to the control of the gravel industry. They're licensed to extract from there. That's a huge amount of land each year. Those of you may be familiar with the mega quarry in Ontario that was put forward up in the Shelburne, Melanchthon area. And that 5,000 acres is equivalent to two mega quarries every year. It is a huge amount of land. And then the last number that's on my slide here, 5,043, is 40. Right now in Ontario, there is 43% more land that has been dug up and destroyed. So not just granted to the industry to as a license, but actually land that they have put the bulldozers on, started to destroy, disturbed the land, as it's called in the province, and from a regulatory perspective. There's 43% more land disturbed now than there was 2 decades ago. As Mark was saying, if you really did come in, extract the gravel, return the land to some other use, then that number shouldn't be growing by almost, let's round it up, 50%. It should be staying much more consistent, but it's growing. And all these numbers, all these huge numbers, this growth, this sort of continuing scarring across Ontario, you got to put it into context with how much gravel we're actually using in Ontario. That's remained flat. In fact, if you look over the last 2 decades, from the year 2000 to now, the amount of gravel we used in the first decade is higher than the amount of gravel we've used in the last decade. So the amount of gravel we're using in Ontario has actually gone down in the last 10 years, yet the scarring of the land in terms of the amount of licenses, the lands that are turned over under control, and the land that's actually dug up is going up. It doesn't make sense. And as I say, and as the speakers today have so excellently framed, it is not a benign activity. It destroys environments and it damages communities. Gravel feeds the very things that we need to be the most cautious about in dealing with climate change, which is an incredibly serious issue, that we've really got to come to grips with. And it's gravel that feeds it. Yes, we'll still need gravel to build smarter communities, but we'll need less gravel to build smarter communities. Sprawl is a consumer of copious amounts of gravel. And all this is being done, by the way, while we're trying to be good as settlers about the Indigenous communities, whose lands we are sharing with them. It ignores them. They're not involved in these decisions at all, which is a shame. And this has been said, but I'll say it again, the current policy in Ontario, starting at what's called the provincial policy level, the highest level planning document in Ontario, says that there is no need to show need for a new gravel mine. Let me just say that again. Right now, you don't have to demonstrate that there's a need to establish another gravel mine. And where does that get us? That gets us 13 times 5,000 acres and 43% more disturbed land. It is an absolutely ridiculous policy, and it sets the stage for exactly the problem that we're facing in Ontario. Next slide, please. So what do we need to do? What do we need to do? The solution that we're advocating for is this idea of a moratorium, a temporary pause on new gravel approvals. Given the facts that I've just said to you, that we're using less gravel than we have historically, but we're still scarring the landscape in an ever increasing manner, we can take a pause. And what we want to do during that pause is to bring people together. The aggregate policy really reflects thinking from the 1950s and 60s, where, as I said in my video, where the land was just ours for the taking. We didn't have to respect it. We didn't think about sustainability. We didn't think about permanence. There'd always be another plot of land that we could dig up or cut down or do what we wanted to it. We're hopefully more enlightened now, and we need to upgrade the policy to reflect that. We need to find a new path forward. And to be very clear, the coalition is saying this needs to be an independent panel. We don't want the government to go away and say, okay, we've studied the issue and this is what it is. We want a truly independent panel that conducts public hearings with all the visibility that type of process tracks so that we can understand who's saying what and who's in the table. But more importantly, because we ask questions, okay, well, what is this more? What would this moratorium, this temporary pause, really cause to have happen? Well, it won't, hurt our current supply of gravel. If we've got 13 times the amount we need, we've got these dormant pits that are just in a state way underproducing what they've already been licensed to do. It's not going to reduce the amount of, it's not going to cause a shortage of gravel in Ontario. And it's not going to take away anyone's rights. The current people that are licensed to extract gravel can continue to do that. And it's not going to take away people's jobs. It's people who are earning a living, the good men and women that work in this industry that aren't doing anything wrong. They're just trying to, put food on their table and clothes on their kids. It's not going to hurt them. But what it will do is really give us a chance to sort of get these community issues, get these municipal issues. I really feel for municipalities, and I'll come back to this at the end, but they've been put in an absolutely unreasonable position on this issue, right? It's not fair how municipalities have been placed. And so we need this opportunity to revisit it and to really try to chart a new way forward. Next slide, please. So, translating some of what I've just said now into the situation that's being faced in your local community. I mean, the example about the over extraction and dormancy and over licensing and dormancy, is absolutely your poster child example. 7 pits and quarries clustered together. The applicants' own studies state that those pits and quarries are producing about 10% of what they're capable of producing. And now an 8th person wants to come in and take another 100 acres of agricultural land that have, source water protection, groundwater, significant features and characteristics to it, and destroy it as well. It just doesn't make any sense, right? Why would we, if we've got 7 pieces of land already being scarred, go back to Mark's comments from an agricultural perspective, why would we take another piece of agricultural land and destroy it for no reason? It doesn't make sense. It's not reasonable. It's all for the idea of individual profit and gain by the 8th person coming in to try and make money. It was interesting as we used the Wilmot example in a recent meeting with the ministry, and they said, yeah, well, that's, we want to keep a level playing field. Everyone gets a chance. Well, no, gravel mining is not a benign activity. The idea should not be that in our province of Ontario that we're going to maximize the amount of gravel mines across the province. That doesn't get us anywhere where we need to go in terms of the important issues. It makes a lot of people try to get out to make a buck, but it damages society, it damages the environment, and it wreaks havoc on climate change, which is already going to wreak havoc on us. It's not an answer by any way or means. The issues, people have brought up are just, they're fundamental, they're real, they're common sense. Until the recent changes, air quality wasn't even considered when it comes to an aggregate license. Luckily, you can talk about it in terms of the zoning, but it wasn't even considered as part of the aggregate license. Now, in some specific cases, they are saying that they want to look at air quality, and air quality is important to really think about. I think what Christina did was smart, because it's not just about dust on your car in the morning or having to wipe off the lawn chairs before you sit in them. It is this, ppm 2.5, the really small stuff that gets into your bloodstream, that's a determinant of your health, whether it be respiratory health or cardiac health, et cetera. It is a serious issue and it needs to be studied. And I think there are still questions. Like a lot of the studies that I've been told about in getting ready for this meeting tonight tells me that there's still questions on the table. That need to be better answered. And there are concerns that I don't think ever can be answered. Gravel mining is not benign. They can try to tell you until the dust must be mitigated on site. Standard policy associated with every gravel mine. Mitigated. Mitigated means making a bad thing less bad. Negated would mean making a bad thing go away. They're not going to negate the dust that comes from a gravel mine. They're going to mitigate it. There are fundamental issues associated with this. And so that brings me to this last comment about the role of the municipality and that kind of stuff, and why I feel sorry for them. I mean, first of all, they're in a situation now where every year they have less and less control. It used to be that municipalities would be very strict about ensuring whether a gravel operation could stay above the water table or go below the water table. That's been taken away from them. Some of them could pass bylaws to deal with things like noise and hours of operation and that. They've been told they can't do that anymore. Municipalities used to be able to, on the way in during the licensing process, cut what they called haul route agreements, which basically required the municipality to be compensated for the wear and tear and destruction that trucks take on local roadways. They've been told they can't do that anymore. Every time they turn around, they're getting more and more squeezed in terms of what they're being able to do. Yet they represent the community, they live in the community. They know what they're going to go through, that their community is going to be forced upon them. At the highest level, the aggregate policy in Ontario has these two branches to it. There's the license that the province controls and the zoning that the local municipality controls. And there's an interlock between the two. The province can't issue a license if the zoning isn't in place. So what I would implore your community to do is to make it clear to your municipal government that you want them to live up to their part of the deal on this, which is to protect them. Now, they're going to be concerned because, there's this thing called the Ontario Lands Tribunal, and there's an appeals process that the applicant has an opportunity to take it to invoke, which effectively takes the decision out of the hands of the municipality and gives it off to this hearing. But I think what my plea is to convince your municipality to keep these things separate. The decision about whether the municipality wants to support this land use, this proposal, this new gravel mine in your community, separate from what may happen in these other processes that go on subsequently. The municipality can make all the decisions that they want to about to what degree they want to support any no decision that they make. They could decide that they're going to, take a full-on fight and hire experts and legal people on that, and side by side with the community, charge through the whole hearing. They could decide that they can't do that for legitimate reasons. But the thing that they must do is to take that initial no decision. They need to look at the impact that this operation would have on this community. They need to look at the legitimate issues that the community is bringing up, and they need to exercise that interlock that says, no, we don't think this is good for our community. We don't think this is good for Wilmot to have this type of situation of this new land use. We've got 7 of them already. They're not operating. Why the heck do we need an 8th in terms of bringing in? So congratulations to everyone who showed up tonight. Great turnout tonight. Great speakers working on the right issues. We're going to be with you. The coalition only exists because of all these communities going through this pain. I spent 6 years with an organization called Gravel Watch Ontario, and I used to hate the intake calls, as I called them. When that phone first rang and someone says, "Oh, we were just told that someone wants to put a gravel mine in our backyard," I still remember my first call with Sam, and it was a painful phone call for me because I could tell the passion in her voice and how she didn't want this to happen to her community. But she knew she was up against a one-sided, lopsided situation, and it was going to be tough, and you're going to have to work hard. But you guys have done that. You've done so much in terms of bringing this issue to life and setting the stage to get the decision that you deserve, which is for your community to say, no, we don't want this in our backyards. So thank you, and thank you for letting me join you tonight.
Thank you, Graham. And in a couple of moments, we're going to talk about the action you can take to get the decision that you deserve. But first, I want to ask everybody if you have any questions, either for Sam or for Christina, or for Graham or for Sarah, or for Rory, who's watching through the chat box, and I see him chatting, so he might be able to answer as well. And I noticed that Joyce asked a question. Joyce is from Grey Highlands and wondered if it would be helpful for her to delegate the community or tell the council. So that, first of all, that's terrific solidarity you're showing, Joyce. And Rory said, for sure, email Wilmot Council and let them know that other people's eyes are on this issue. So Marilyn's asking that next question, and Sam, I'm going to ask you to answer this. Does the person have to live in Wilmot to delegate, or if the person's in the Waterloo region, is it okay for them to delegate? What would your advice be?
That's a great question. We're trying to set up a meeting with the CAO. I would imagine I don't really know that answer. I would think that it would be a possibility.
Rory
But-
has chimed in and said anyone can delegate.
Okay, good. Yeah, the water that recharges on this site does feed the integrated water system that provides water for Elmira, Waterloo, Cambridge, Petersburg, New Dundee, all of Wilmot Township. This provides up to 10% of the region's integrated water system. So it would make sense that if you live in the region, you might want to delegate about this.
And Sam, that's good advice, because if you're drinking groundwater that's coming from Wilmot Township and you don't live there, you have an interest in this. Sarah, I can't tell if you're twitching to say something. It's hard in Zoom land to know if people are moving to say something. So Sarah, did you want to make a comment?
No, I just thought that was I thought it was a fabulous presentation, Graham. I really learned a lot there. But no, I wasn't making any move to say anything, but that's what I want to say.
All right. And Christina's saying when you delegate, you do state your address, and having more eyes from outside Wilmot and participants is welcome. So there you are. That's an invitation. And as we continue to talk, I'm going to ask that the email address for delegating be put in the chat box again, so that it's available for people to see that. Are there any other questions people have for Marilyn? Saying all the presentations were amazing and so very useful. Can we have access to the slides and the videos? In fact, we are recording this meeting and we will be sending the recording out afterwards to everybody who RSVP'd. I know there was at least one media person who was unable to be here tonight, one reporter who could not be here but wanted the recording so she could write a story. And I wouldn't be surprised, Sam, if you and Rory Christina plan on sending this to the council members. Is that something you're planning on?
Would love to. Yes, definitely. I was a little bit disappointed to see that nobody was in attendance. Can I just say something more about the register to delegate? Because that's a really great question. And the more I just think about it, when I see the picture of Farmland behind you, Mike, there's a wonderful organic Laplel organic farm directly across the road from this proposal that gets customers from Mississauga, Toronto. They come from all over. So there's all different ways that people would be impacted by this proposal. So so whether it's water, farmland, or whatnot. Plus, we will also be, of course, taking this call to our MPP, Mike Harris, which of course then goes to the province. So this goes beyond the township to a provincial level as well. So I think eyes from all over. Any concern should be communicated.
So Sam, that's a good connection to the next topic, which is taking action, and will give us a way as well to answer Marilyn's question from the very beginning, which is, what about Doug Ford? So we have a slide, a take action slide, I think, and I'm going to describe the actions that people can take. So excuse me, you can sign and share the petition. Now, Sam, you have your own petition, am I right? Your own Citizens for Safe Groundwater petition?
Yes, we do. It's on our website. Yeah.
Right. So that's what we're putting in the chat box now as I even talk. I'm hoping that somebody's putting that. Yes, it is. Sign the petition here. So you can sign the petition from wherever you are to the Wilmot Township Council. On a week from Friday, that's tomorrow, a week from tomorrow, we're going to be doing something. It's a group activity that's called a phone zap. So here's what happens in a phone zap. We gather in a Zoom meeting like this, and we give you a script and a list of phone numbers so that you can call the mayor and the councillors of Wilmot Township and say that you want them to listen to the experts, listen to the community, and say no to the Hallman pit. And we organize it in a meeting like this so that we can get you organized, answer your questions, provide support and coaching. The phone zap, the whole thing lasts for about an hour. So we meet, we greet, we orient you. You do phoning for 20 minutes or so. You can also send an email to some if you'd rather. And then we talk a bit about the experience, share, and that's the whole hour. We'll be phoning and emailing the mayor and councillors, as well as Mike Harris Jr., your MPP, and Doug Ford, the premier. So you can sign up for that phone zap. I think a link for that is going to go in the chat box too. And as well, we're going to send you an email with all the details so that you'll have another opportunity to register, to delegate, to sign the petition, and to sign up for the phone zap. Now, I'm going to, in a minute, Sam, I'm going to ask you to speak about this, but you want people to volunteer to distribute leaflets and lawn signs, correct? Do you want to say a little more about that?
Yes, sure. So we have quite a few lawn signs that are left from generous donations. So we're thinking 2 weeks before the April 4th date, we'd like to get those out in the community as much as possible and get those out and just to raise awareness. And then we also have some leaflets that we'd like to do some mail drops. So we have lots of great volunteers already, but just want to seek as much as we possibly can. So yeah, thank you, Rachel. Sign up to volunteer. So if you're interested and you have some time, you like to walk, it should be nice weather, just send us an email, let us know how much time you think you can commit, and we'll try to put something together and probably have some sort of a meet and organize.
Okay, and I see a message in the chat box from Tim Louie, who's the Member of Parliament. Hi, Tim. I can see you on the screen there, and you say you're proud of everyone, which is terrific, and you want to continue, listen, and advocate. And so I'm going to make a couple advocacy suggestions to you, Tim. I'm going to suggest you call the mayor, and that you think it's important that he say, listen to what the community wants and not what the company needs. Pardon me, I said that backwards. What the community needs and not what the developer wants. I think it'd be terrific and important. I saw you put your thumb up. That's a terrific thing to do. I also personally think, and I'm sure Sam would agree with me, that if you have not yet written a letter to Mike Harris Jr. and the Premier saying that you think it's time for a moratorium on all new mining, all new approvals for gravel mining, including the Hallman pit, I think that would be an important action you could take in support of the community. How does that sound to you? You can write a letter like that too? Terrific, Tim. Thank you for being here and thank you for that advocacy. We've been talking several times, the last action we're referring to, we've talked several times about registering to delegate. And Tim says, as a musician, I can't get basement apartment out of my head. It's the lovely earworm, don't you think, Tim? So Tim, you have to tell us through the chat what kind of musician you are, what your instrument is, just so we know. And Graham's made a point about climate change, and the federal government is providing leadership on responding to climate change, and gravel is the feedstock of urban sprawl, highways, and cement production. And it's a very interesting statistic that if you took the world's level of cement production, the carbon emissions from cement production, if cement production was a country, would make it the #3rd emitter. So there's huge changes have to happen in order for us to deal with the climate crisis. So it's terrific that you're here to make those connections, Tim. So the register to delegate, we've posted a couple times and we'll post one more time just so it's all in one place. Marilyn Hayes says Wilmot Township unanimously supported 50 by 30, which requires us to safeguard our farmland. So that's a good point for people to make in their delegations. It's always good and important to hold our elected officials to the statements that they make and the values they express. So I hope you've got those. I hope you're signing up for things. We also have the moratorium petition, and if we get 40 more signatures, we'll be at 4,000, which is terrific. So we'll put that in the chat box too. Now there's one more thing we're going to do, a couple more. The last thing we're going to do tonight is we're going to raise some money because this action costs money. And as Sam has mentioned, they've got expert reports that they're preparing to take to the council this month. And those studies are underway. Those studies need to be paid for. The group has some money, they've raised some money, and the group Citizens for Safe Groundwater needs about $15,000. And prior to this meeting, they raised about $4,000, received pledges of $4,000 from people. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to make a pledge to help Citizens for Safe Groundwater bring these studies forward and convince the Wilmot Township Council to say no to the Hallman pit. So we're putting a donation link in the chat box, and here's how I want to ask you to do this, pardon me, as to make your pledge. So I'm going to actually start with an amount of money and see if somebody will make that pledge. And we have $4,000 pledged already, and I want to see if we're able to multiply that by 1 or 2 times to help the group and help you as a community make the best presentation you can make on April the 4th. So I just want to start off and ask if there's somebody who would pledge $1,500. That would be 10% of the 15,000 that Citizens for Safe Groundwater needs. And I know $1,500 may sound like a big amount of money. So, and we're here in Zoom land, so you're maybe looking at somebody next to you, you're talking, you're saying, can we do that? Should we do that? Maybe you're saying to each other, well, we could give more than $1,500. Should we do that? And I know it takes a couple of minutes to reach forward to the keyboard and type in a pledge. The pledge doesn't need to be fulfilled right away. The pledge can be fulfilled in installments. While you're thinking about that, I'm looking at a comment from Melanie Van Elfen. Melanie, I hope I said your name right. And you said you're glad you're able to join tonight. Thank you to everyone who spoke. You're the Liberal candidate for Kitchener-Conestoga. You're listening and you're happy to connect anytime. And Melanie, I would ask you the same question we asked of Tim, which is, will you write a letter to the mayor of Wilmot Township? Will you delegate at the meeting? Will you write a letter to Steve? Will you call Steve Del Duca, who's the leader of the Liberal Party, and ask if he'll endorse the moratorium on all new gravel mining approvals? Because if that moratorium was passed, that would stop the Hallman pit. Is that, Melanie, you're nodding your head. You're going to do all those things? You're going to register to delegate? You're going to do all that? That'd be terrific. Okay, so I'm coming back to pledges here, and I want to know, is there someone here who would like to pledge $1,500 to Citizens for Safe Groundwater? Roy Lamb pledges $1,500. Thank you, Roy. All right. You know, Sarah, I'm a little nervous to say this to you because you're a songwriter, and songwriters communicate with their own muse, you know, and getting suggestions for other kinds of songs from people like me is really
I'm open. Bring it on. Bring it on.
maybe not a good idea, but some kind of a pledge song, you know, some kind of a song that honors people's pledges and encourages that, because it really is grassroots effort like this. It's incredible. I mean, you had your own experience of raising hundreds of thousands of dollars in Mount Nemo to stop the Nelson Quarry.
And I know I know how important that money is to go towards experts. You know, Wilf Ruland is an incredible hydrogeologist, very experienced. That it's not cheap to hire credible experts, but they're invaluable. And so, you know, in our case, we had to hire wetland biologists, and it goes a long way to making your case when you have the resources to fund the credible experts. So it's really valuable and important. I'm not sure about the song. I'll mull that one over.
Mull away, Sarah. And if in the middle of this you're inspired, this is like a telethon. So if in the middle of this you're inspired even to sing a little ditty, the scrap of it that comes to your mind, we would welcome that. But I'm going to ask you something else in a second, Sarah, but I'm just wondering if anybody else wants to match Roy's pledge. Is there anybody else in the meeting who wants to match Roy's pledge of $1,500? Because Sarah, I think you know, and I think you could probably tell us from your own experience that this is really meaningful contribution coming from people in the community. That we know these are hard-earned, hard-won dollars, and it's a sign of people's commitment to make a donation like this.
It is, and it is all volunteer work. You know, that the real heavy lifting comes from the neighbors, the people that care, that put in all the hours studying policy, looking at all the possibilities, the big picture, the fine details, and all that stuff is done as a labor of love. So to get some financial support from people who are able to, whether it's, you know, whatever the amount, really does help bolster the energy of all of those volunteers.
Is there somebody who would make a pledge of $1,000 to add to the pledge that Roy has made? because together with the 4,000 that's been pledged before the meeting and 1,500, that would be 5,500. Another 1,000 would take us. Somebody has asked me privately, can donations be made by check? And the answer is yes. And if so, to whom is it payable and to which address can the check be sent? So Sam, I'm going to ask you to answer that question in the chat while we're talking. Who should checks be made payable to which address, which name and address can the check be sent? And as you're doing that, Sam, I'm going to ask again, is there someone who would like to pledge $1,000? Again, that can be paid in installments. It's really important. This gives the group the confidence to plan. And I see David Prong has just pledged $1,000. Wow.
Awesome.
Thank you, David. Is there somebody who would like to join with David and pledge $1,000? I was in the middle of saying it can be done in installments. Sam, I think it's as long as you know that you have the pledges, and you can make the commitments with confidence, and you can pay the experts over time if you need to. So 500 a month for 2 months, or 300 a month for 3 months, or 250 a month for 4 months. All of that will help. Is there anybody who'd like to join David and make a pledge of $1,000? Sam, I see it. You've put there, make the check payable to CSGW, email Sam. And then Sam, when they email you, are you going to give them a mailing address?
I'll give the address, yeah.
You'll give the mailing address then, rather than put it in the chat box. I think that's a good idea from privacy point of view. That's very.
I don't know who's all here.
You're being very smart.
There are some enemies.
Digital word, Sam. Is there somebody who would like to make a pledge of $750? I'm taking a deep breath. Sarah, I'm letting out a deep breath. This is where I like being in the room with people, because you can feel the energy of each other. We can see each other. We can be inspired by the energy of people like Roy and David and the pledges that they've made.
Yes, I'm still trying to think of what rhymes with pledge.
So that's something people can help us out with. Put pledge rhymes in the chat box. Tim, you're a musician. Do you write your own music too? You can join in this. It could be a Tim Sarah co-composition here if you've got some suggestions. Fledgling, and fledgling, pledging a fledgling, fledging a fledgling. All right. How about a $500 pledge? Is there someone who pledge $500? Rachel Rennie says, step up to the ledge and at the ledge and make a pledge. Legislature is a kind of a ledge. Now,
change the ledge. Yeah, affect the ledge, make a pledge.
Affect the ledge, make a pledge. Pledge, Joyce says pledge and knowledge. That's very good. Rory's just pledged $500. Thank you, Rory. That brings us up total, if I've got my math right here, 2,600. Can I do that? 2,370, $7,000. So that brings us halfway. Christina's pledged $500. Rachel's pledged $1,000. You see, Rachel, you got Rachel rhyming there. So thank you very much, Rachel, for the inspiration, both on the pledging. That's a hard word to say. The pledging and the donation too. Thank you very much. So I'm trying to keep a good running total here and hoping somebody's going to help me with that. But I think we're at $400, $600, $700, $800, $8,500. So I wonder if we can get to 10,000. Is there somebody who'll make another $500 or maybe even a $1,500 pledge that would get us to would get the Citizens for Safe Groundwater to $10,000? So somebody has sent me a private message saying they've just made a $300 donation. That's terrific. That brings us to 8,800. How about $250?
I'll pledge that, Mike.
Sarah, wow. Thank you very much, Sarah. That brings us just over $9,000. Is there somebody who will match? How many people will match Sarah with the $250 donation? are the people who
A
will
duet
match.
of sorts.
Pardon me?
I say a duet of sorts.
A duet of sorts. You could say if you make a pledge of $250 now, we can credit it as a duet with Sarah. Now, how many people can say they've done a duet with Sarah? Okay, so here it comes. Well, Sarah for $250. Okay, hasn't quite come in yet. All right. So I'm now going to ask for people if they'll make pledges of any amount, if you'll enter them in the chat box. And this is Sam. In about a minute, I'm going to call you onto the virtual stage here so that you can make thank you and some closing comments. I think we're at $9,050. And I think
Penny and Brian have just piped in. Thank you for $250 as well.
$250, great. And Danny's pledged 50, so that's 91, 93.50. So $650 will get us to 10,000. And so I'm going to ask people if, as we're going to, in a minute, I'm going to call Sam back to the virtual stage to thank everybody and talk about what happens next. You know, Sam, there's something we didn't answer Marilyn's question, and I'm going to do that first. Marilyn, you said, what about Doug Ford? You know, we're a nonpartisan organization. The Water Watchers, the Reform Gravel Mining Coalition is a nonpartisan organization. We don't talk about which parties to vote for and which parties not to vote. But we are partisan for the environment, and we are partisan for the community. And so we say that you should vote for the parties that make and the candidates that commit to protect your neighborhood and protect your community. That's the kind of partisan vote that we take. And folks, elections matter. You know this, elections matter. So I'm going to go to you, Sarah. I'm going to watch the chat box for public and private messages. And if we get to 10,000 before we conclude the meeting, Sarah, Sam, I'll come briefly back on to let you know that. Thank you everybody for being here. And Sam, I'm going to turn it over to you. You're going to say thank you to everybody, and then we're going to get to hear the Escarpment Blues one more time.
Thank you all. That was fun. That was everything I was expecting it to be. Thank you everybody for your generosity. I know it's been 2 years. We've all been crying the same tune for a long time, and thank you. This is great. This isn't quite a thank you, but I want to let the community know that we will be providing an opportunity for individuals to meet. So somebody asked earlier about, are we going to be picketing the Castle Kilbride? We had considered that idea, and it's still not off the table. But what we will do for sure is the Whitsels have very generously offered an opportunity for us to gather safely outdoors. And we'll be setting up some sort of a recording opportunity. So for those who are not able to get on Zoom, a lot of people in our community have issues not having internet or not having computers or not even just being able to get on Zoom. So if you're speaking to your neighbors who you think wouldn't be able to appear as a delegate virtually and want to do more than just write a letter in, please watch your email and be in touch with your neighbors, and let's keep talking over this next month and make sure that even though we can't gather at the castle live, which would be amazing, like we did the first time and fill chambers, 450 people, and they couldn't let anyone more in, we will find alternatives to make sure that everybody can feel like they're still part of this process as they should be. So thank you. And please continue to watch your email. Please talk to your neighbors, register to delegate, and sign the petition and keep in touch. And thank you. Thank you so much. This will definitely give council what they need to turn this down with the expert testimony. Thank you.
If they blow a hole in my backyard, everyone is gonna run away, and the creeks won't flow to the Great Lake below. Will the water in the well still be okay? If they blow a hole in the backbone, the one that runs across the muscles of the land, we might get a load of stone for the road, but but I don't know how much longer we can stand. We'll need to build some new apartments, and I know we're gonna have to fix the roads. But if we blow another hole in the escarpment, the wild ones won't have anywhere to go. If they blow a hole in my backyard, everyone is gonna run away, and the creeks won't flow to the great lake below. Will the water in the well still be okay? And we'll keep driving on the blind line. If we don't know where we wanna go, and even knowledge that sound can get watered down, and truth can get sucked out the car window. Truth gets sucked out the car window. We're 2/3 water. What do we really need but sun and shower, soil and sea? We're 2/3 water. The aquifers provide. Deep down in the rock, there's a pearl inside. If they blow a hole in my backyard, everyone is gonna run away, and the creeks won't flow to the great lake below. Will the water in the well still be okay? If they blow a hole in the backbone, the one that runs across the muscles of the land, oh, we might get a load of stone for the road, but I don't know how much longer we can stand. Oh, we might get a load of stone for the road, but I don't know how much longer we can stand.